Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Let's get started here with seven simple strategies to boost sales with sponsored products. We're live from Boston here in the Seaport area of Boston. It's a sort of gloomy day, but if you guys want to chime in and let us know where you're tuning in from today, we'd love to hear from you. We have excellent speakers lined up for you today. We found our best of the best and our experts in-house. My name is Gari Angar. I'm the Manager of Product Education here at Takeometrics. If you have entered our product at any point or looked at our Help Center articles, you've probably seen my face floating around. Apologize, you have to look at it again today.
Hi, I'm Kathleen. I'm the manager of the Customer Success and Support team, and I'm excited to go through these 7 simple strategies today.
And hey everyone, this is Mike O'Brien. I am on the sales team at Takeometrics. This is my first webinar, so I'm excited to get into the details of things.
Perfect. So we're going to start off right off the bat with a quick poll. This is just for us to get an idea for what content you might or might not be familiar with. So I'm going to launch that poll because we are going to go straight into campaign creation and strategies with this webinar. But if you want a little bit more background and information about other sponsored products aspects, we've hosted a whole bunch of webinars around that topic before. And we're going to drop in a little link to a page that has all of our webinar recordings on it, so you can go back and review some of those as well. So I've launched the poll, and I can drop this link into the chat box as well.
Oh, I just dropped it.
Oh, perfect. Kathleen beat me to it. So that page has all of our previous webinars. I definitely encourage you to watch some of them, especially the ones titled Sponsored Products Masterclass. It's going to be a great foundation for sponsored products basics as well as strategies. Today's focus is going to be around campaign strategies.
And if you guys can see where I dropped in that link in the chat box, also feel free to write in your own questions in that control panel.
Yep, we have our team monitoring the questions as well, and we'll try to address some of them live too, so keep them coming. We have a dedicated section for questions, but really anytime you think of one, feel free to reach out.
Chime in.
Perfect, so let me close that poll. Great. It looks like most of you have not attended a Sponsored Products Masterclass webinar before, so that page will be great. I think I highly recommend viewing it. They're all from this year, so very recent content, very relevant to your business.
Yeah, I think it will help. It gets more into the nitty-gritty of building out your campaign structure, so that'll be really helpful.
Perfect. So on our agenda for today, we're going to, review the 7 simple strategies, as the title promised. We also have a little section at the end where we'd like to review some of the common questions and misconceptions that we've encountered. All 3 of us have spent a lot of time talking to sellers. We've probably spoken with thousands upon thousands of sellers at this point between the 3 of us.
Definitely.
So we've encountered a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. We'd like to share some of that with you because I'm sure you have those as well. After that, we're going to do a live demo of SP Optimizer, which is a software you might be familiar with. It's going to make your Amazon advertising life a lot easier. So Mike will be leading that demo. And then right after the demo, we have an open-ended Q&A to address questions you might have about campaign structure in particular that we covered today, or about sponsored products in general, or about the SP Optimizer as well. We'll be happy to answer all of those. Great, so let's dive right into it. So we're going to set the stage here. These are the 7 strategies we're going to be sharing with you, and we'll dive into each in more detail today. So we're going to show you how best to group your products, how to set up a mirrored campaign structure, explore and exploit strategy. If that sounds a little vague right now, don't worry about it. We'll give you more detail. We'll show you how to double down on your best performers, optimizing your bids, and then how strategy and goals go together. And then we'll end this with a section on budgets as well, because we do encounter a lot of questions around that. If there's anything that we don't cover on this, feel free to reach out with questions. Like I said, we'll try to address them live as well as have our team answering them as well. Perfect. So this brings us to our next poll. They're coming in kind of quick here, back to back. So we just want to know, how long have you been running sponsored products?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to find out where people are at in their journey. We can kind of understand our audience better.
Yeah. I mean, the goal is for you to get the most information out of this. So if you let us know how long you've been running, we can make sure we cover the right information in the right way. We'll give that a couple more minutes to come in. while people are responding to the poll, looks like we have people from all over: Puerto Rico, Colorado, Ontario. Definitely let us know where you're dialing in from today. We're excited to see that.
It's a wide range.
Wide range. Got Miami. Definitely would rather be in Miami right now, or Puerto Rico than Boston. Sounds lovely.
Hey, Boston's pretty nice.
That's true. It is nice for Boston. Awesome. So I'm going to close out that poll. Looks like most people have voted. And it looks like most of us have some experience under our belt, have been running ads for over a year. And then the next section is sort of the opposite end of the spectrum, where you've been running ads for 0 to 3 months. So if anything, we're going to try and cover all the material today, but if you feel like we're going over something too quickly, you want to give us a little bit more detail, definitely let us know in the chat box. We'll try to add a little bit more color or give you the right resources to give you more background.
And if we don't get to everyone, they can just reach out to us directly, the website or wherever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we look at every single question, comment, concern that we encounter in every avenue, so feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I can definitely help.
Perfect. Awesome. So let's dive right in with our very first section, grouping your product by objective and margin.
Yeah, I can dive into this one. So a lot of people, when we're talking about sponsored products, I think that they think of the first step is, okay, how do I go in and optimize my keywords and look at my bids? I would call grouping your products by objective and margin and getting that structure correct step 0. I think it's really critical to people's success. I think your ads will only work as well as you have them set up. So being able to group your products by, objective and margin and based around your goals is extremely important. If we go to the next slide, what we can see are the different objectives and the different phases of your products and your business that you want to think about when setting up your campaigns. Different products are going to have different goals here. So in order to measure how you're performing, it's really important to think about the life cycle of your product. So whether you're in a launch phase, a growth phase, looking for profitability, or a liquidation phase, and I would even maybe put seasonality in there as well, you're going to want to look for different metrics and think about your ACoS numbers in a different light. So in each situation, when we're talking with sellers and I work with a lot of people who are launching new products on a weekly or even a monthly basis, what we want to do is really focus on driving market share in real estate and really focus on getting impressions and clicks on those. So not really thinking about an ACoS number rather than thinking about how many clicks am I getting, I think is really important to get that traffic to your products. And then as that product matures and that life cycle continues to develop, what you can focus on are different metrics. For instance, in the growth phase, you're looking more at an ACoS, a lower ACoS number, but focus on sales and orders. And then when you're thinking about driving, money into the business, some bottom line dollars there, you definitely want to think about your cost per click. How much are you paying to capture these sales? What are your conversion rates looking like, and how can you get that ACoS number as low as possible while still driving a lot of sales and not sacrificing too much there? Then, of course, liquidating inventory. We know Amazon changes their fee structures a lot. So how do we tie that into sponsored ads and look at the products that are slow movers and not performing well, where you can think about having an ACoS number to push those products?
Yeah, and if a lot of you haven't encountered, these particular objectives before, you could just think of this lining up with the product lifecycle, which might be more familiar to a lot of you. So it's going to be kind of the same thing where you're ramping up, product reaches maturity and growth, and then there is a plateau and then a slow decline as you phase that product out and bring an improved version into the
Yeah,
product.
that's what, when I ask about objectives, what I hear a lot is basically everyone thinks their objective is the profit phase, but you have to go through the product life cycle. You can't just go straight to the profitability phase.
Yeah, I think at the beginning it's definitely, you got to think about it as not an expense, but an investment for your business, where you shouldn't be focused on driving dollars. I would be more focused on maybe even staying around break even, just to get those eyes in front of my products and hopefully they convert, which would obviously be nice, and that turns into reviews, which turns into organic sales. But I would put a pretty hefty budget at the beginning to make sure that I'm getting exposure on those newer products, and then vice versa when I'm thinking about profitability, thinking about more affordable clicks for my ads.
Yep. And then to...
Yes. So how your margins can help create a benchmark. So this is right. We actually have an article on this, which Gary will drop in the chat box now. So if you want to check it out and get an idea of where you should be tracking your ACoS numbers, this is a great graph to help you do that. You can see here, essentially what we're showing you are how your campaign should be structured by similar margin products in the same campaigns. It makes for controlling that ACoS to be more efficient. So if you're thinking about those different phases, which we showed on the screen before, and where you should be, thinking about the ACoS numbers relative to those, you want to take a look at the margins of those products. Obviously, if you're looking for profitability, you want your ACoS numbers to be lower than the margins of the products in those campaigns. And then moving into growth and launch, you can afford a higher ACoS because you're looking to get those impressions, those clicks, and drive that top line revenue at the beginning. So this is really useful to set that benchmark.
Yeah, I think it's super important, but also it's a time investment to even put this information together. And what we get a lot is, a lot of Amazon sellers are running all different areas of their business, and they don't feel as though they have the time to kind of get the margins and the objectives together for every SKU, because we work with sellers that have 3 SKUs or 15,000 SKUs. So I know it's hard when you get up into the thousands of SKUs, but it's just super important to put the time investment in the beginning to get it structured correctly, and then you'll have an easier time managing them and maintaining like a profitable business.
Yeah, and Tom has a really good question about what if you're a small company and don't have capital to put into a launch phase where profit is a negative number?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's just that's how the game is played. You have to have a bit of a time period where you do invest and the sales may not be profitable.
Yeah.
At least the advertising sales may not be profitable. You could try to make like your overall sales still profitable.
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of a linear process here. So there's not a way to jump in right into the profit phase without having to go through the growth and launch.
Yeah.
But your investment would still be based, of course, on your marketing budget. So your marketing budget should be determined after you decide which phase you're in and your willingness to spend during the initial 2 phases.
Yeah.
You can't come up with a marketing budget to be profitable initially.
Right. Yeah. I think you can be conservative with your daily budgets there. And then as you start to gather more sales, you can start to increase your budget. So whatever is feasible for you.
Perfect. And then Sarah has a question about the chart, about the percentages are ACoS goals. I think, Sarah, you might be using our software already where we refer to ACoS targets,
Yes.
and that would be correct. So these would be recommendations for what you use as ACoS targets. For those of you unfamiliar, we'll be going more into this a little bit later when we show you the product.
Definitely.
Great. So related to this chart, we covered sort of the bottom part of it below that blue line, but there is a little section up top that's important to pay attention to as well.
Yeah, so this is a bonus tip. Write it down in your notebooks. Don't forget the discovery phase. So what I was alluding to earlier, right, when we're thinking about Amazon and launching new products, don't get too focused on an ACoS number. Focus on data collection and discovery. I think that's really important, right? If you think about one of the best ways to get your product discovered is, how much real estate can I actually gather on Amazon? I think real estate's really important. So focusing more about the market share that you can gather, especially for new products where, people might be selling something that has been sold on Amazon for a while now, and you're just kind of getting into those categories. You're trying to figure out, what's the best placement for me, and sponsored ads is a great outlet to do that. But if you're just focused on a low ACoS, you're probably going to be paying for bids and for spots that aren't going to get you the right amount of impressions or click data that you're looking for. And you need all that information to make more informed decisions to stay optimized. So focus more on gathering a lot of data at the beginning and then using that to your advantage.
Yeah, and I think that goes for any of the objectives, even if you're further along in the product life cycle, but your campaign is new, you still need to go through a period of data collection in order to be able to optimize it.
Yeah, and what I've seen is, it's definitely going to be a robust investment upfront, but that's going to help you get to that profitability phase quicker than if you just start off trying to be profitable, because you're not going to have enough data to make the kind of decisions you need to be profitable. So it's a weird catch-22 there, but you basically have to do it because it'll actually be faster and better for you to be more profitable. That brings us to our second strategy here, creating a mirrored campaign structure. And I think we just had a question come in from Herbert around automatic campaigns. So Herbert will be covering that in just a second here, so hold tight.
Yes, so creating a mirrored campaign structure is really important. I think it just makes for the maintenance of search terms and keywords to be really efficient. So you definitely want to be running both. I talk to a lot of people who are either running one or the other, but having them side by side allows you to really explore what's working well and then exploit it in the manual campaign. So we definitely want to have that structure set up. Whatever you have set up in an automatic campaign, you should have the same exact setup in your manual campaigns. So yeah, if you're looking here, for every automatic, have a corresponding manual campaign. Allows for efficient management, especially if you're growing your catalog and you're running a lot of campaigns. I talked to some sellers who run 50 campaigns, 100 campaigns. It just can become a lot. So having that structure makes it really easy to maintain things. And then you see there, take advantage of the explore and exploit strategy. So in an automatic campaign, just kind of stepping back a little bit, there's no such thing as keywords. There's only such thing as search terms. So you can only identify what people are searching for when your ads are being shown, which gives you a little more, it gives you limited control, and you're really exploring there. So if you think about it, we were talking yesterday as a group, if you're fishing, right, an automatic campaign is casting a really wide net, and you're just looking to get as many fish as possible, where a manual campaign, you have a lot more control and you can exploit keywords. So you can actually have keywords that you want to go after. It's like spearfishing. So I think it's, I work with a lot of people that have either one or the other. A lot of people will also say, I've exhausted my automatic campaign. I just want to run manual. I think sponsored products is always something that you can improve upon. So having both is really important. For instance, there's some spots on Amazon when, if you're running automatic campaigns, you can be shown, where if you're running manual campaigns, you can't be shown. So
particularly on the product listing page, right?
Yeah, so if you're on someone's product page and you're running an ad, you can an automatic campaign, you can be shown under their products. So it's a great way to remain competitive. And I think if you're just running manual as well, you miss out on potential strings of text that convert well that you might not have thought of. We know the Amazon ecosystem is always changing, seasonality occurs, and I think if you just have automatic campaigns on the other side of the spectrum, you're missing out, where you could be bidding for things in your manual campaigns that convert really well, have a good ACoS, good conversion rate, and you could potentially be spending more to make more money there.
Exactly. And then sort of to drive this home a little bit, we've come up with this beautiful graphic.
So that is our example.
I think what is good here is sometimes you forget how important the little things and the details like naming convention is. But for ease of management, you're going to want to make sure everything's exactly the same SKUs in every ad group and the same names for everything. Typically the only thing will change is the word auto and manual and the campaign name.
Yep. Yeah, that's really important. And Kathleen and I have both managed a lot of campaigns for large sellers. And if you aren't being systematic about little things like campaign names, then it's going to cause a lot of trouble down the road. As you're all trying to grow your businesses, it's not going to be sustainable.
Yeah. Especially if I've worked with a couple sellers, and granted they only have a couple of products, but they were naming their campaign names were their ASIN numbers. Mm-hmm. And if they get up to 100 or 1,000 SKUs, I don't think they can keep track of the ASIN numbers in their head. So just making it really simple for you to understand what the campaigns are, will just make your lives that much easier.
Yep, exactly. So same name, same ad groups, same SKUs in those ad groups. Use the search terms, and you can transfer it directly as a keyword into your manual campaign. Quick reminder, your search terms in your automatic are going to be what the customer types into the box there, and your Amazon's going to place your ad based on your product listing pages and back-end keywords.
Exactly. Yep, and we get into that in the next section as well, which is talking about the next strategy is explore and exploit. So if we go to the next, so number 3 out of 7 is use the explore and exploit strategy. So what we were alluding to before is running auto and manual side by side. So auto allows you to explore what works well. What are people searching for when my ads are appearing, and when they're converting on those search terms, how do I exploit that conversion? So this is what we kind of preach here at Takeometrics, use an explore and exploit technique. If you've tried to do this in Seller Central, it's pretty cumbersome. So sneak peek, that's a glimpse of the software. We'll get into more of that a little later here today. So explore, yes, a little teaser. So explore, use the auto campaign data to identify your top performing customer search terms. Exploit, transfer those over into your manual campaigns as keywords where you have more control over the match types of those keywords. So you can run, broad phrase and exact match type keywords, as well as your bidding strategies. So if something's working well, you want to push the pedal there, and vice versa. And manual campaigns allow you to do that. And here is an example of what it would look like in Seller Central. So
what
we're
looking at here is the search term report.
Yeah, so this is search term report. Maybe, Kathleen, I don't use too much of this because I use the software, but I'm sure you've taken a look at it.
You can see in the keyword column, if it's a star, that means it generated from an automatic campaign. And if not, you'll see the keyword there and the match type. So on, for example, line 3, you can see that the customer search term was found from that broad keyword. And in the 2 that are circled, those are coming from automatic campaigns. So it means, Amazon served you up for this. They deemed you relevant for that search term, and the customer converted for it. So that's when you're going to want to move it over into the manual campaign. Mm-hmm. And something we do in our software when we move it over is also just automatically negate it in the auto side as an exact. Mm-hmm. So it's, I guess, another bonus tip.
That's another bonus tip. And it's a good way to control your spend in the automatic, because people do tell us, like Mike was mentioning earlier, people feel like they've exhausted their automatic campaigns. So this is one way, for you to limit how much your automatic campaign is doing and shift more of the burden onto your manual while still coming up with new terms that you can capture.
So keep the automatic campaigns budget really for discovery and not for things you already know are working.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Then we have another little tip at the bottom about if you see an ACE in your search term report. Unfortunately, and Sarah has a question about this, there's not a way you can target a particular ASIN, so Amazon doesn't let you do that, but it's going to give you an idea for your competition. So I would treat it more as competitive intel. So you could see which listings you did convert for and which you didn't. And if you did convert for them, imitation is the best form of flattery. See what they're doing on their listing page that you could incorporate into yours, so you get more of that direct traffic. And then if you're not converting, you need to figure out, is there something in your product listing page that's maybe irrelevant, that's causing you to show up for an irrelevant ad?
Yeah, and you can also use competitor brand name keywords as well. If you want to go after certain competitors, it could be a good
that's true.
Good way to steal sales there.
And then I see a good question from Tom here. So he understands, the auto campaign strategy to get good data, but it's limited to how good your listing is, because that's what Amazon's sort of using to serve you up. So how do you determine what words and phrases you would use in your listing?
That's a good question. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario. What you need to think about your listing is it's dynamic. So once you create it, you can't just leave it. You have to go back and keep optimizing your listing along with your campaigns. So really you use your best knowledge to put in the most relevant information at the start. And then as you start to get in this customer search data and your automatic campaign data, you could go back and either eliminate terms that are causing you to show for irrelevant searches. You can work on adding more back-end keywords that make you seem more relevant to a particular search you do want to show up for.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I would say too. If you don't have the data, use your product knowledge, and then you'll start, once you start running the automatic campaigns, you'll start to see the data and you can optimize.
Yeah, I would say, if you're just starting off with a listing, what you're going to see surface first from an automatic campaign is irrelevant information, but that's important information for you to know for a new listing page, so you can eliminate those parts.
Right, yeah. What doesn't work is just as important as what is working.
Right. Exactly. Perfect. So that brings us right into our next section on how you double down on those performers that are working.
Yeah, I'll take this one. It's pretty similar to what Mike just spoke about, but it's on the manual side. So once you've discovered the search terms that are working for you on the auto side, you've moved them into manual, then you want to look at those manual keywords and get even more targeted. So typically our strategy is you move from auto to a phrase in the manual side, but you could also do from broad to phrase to exact. So you're looking in the search term report to see what has stemmed from a broader a phrase search term or keyword, see what search terms have stemmed from that and converted into sales. And then you're going to add them as either phrase or exact to get even more targeted. So typically those have lower search volume, but you can convert better for them, and they typically have like a lower cost per click. So you definitely want to discover all of the long tail search terms that work for you. And it looks like we got to take a tip on the bottom here too. So this is what I kind of mentioned earlier. To keep your ACoS down, only use phrase and exact, because we're already using auto, which is sort of the same purpose as broad. It's like capturing all the impressions for something relevant to your product. And then we have another example. We sort of went over this on the last section, but now we're kind of calling out the ones that stemmed from a broad keyword. So you're going to take the customer search term, those ones that are circled in green, and then add them in a phrase match in this instance. You could jump right to exact, but then you'd miss out on all the things that might stem from that phrase match.
Exactly. And then if you're using our product, looks like Braden has a question about that. Isn't that what SV Optimizer does, taking keywords from broad to phrase to exact? That's exactly right. So this is what it would look like if you were doing targeted improvements. Within SV Optimizer, we would give you all those recommendations for you to act on. Yeah. So the other one was a search term report if you're doing this manually, and this is how you would do it in the software. Great, so that brings us into our next poll question, which is going to set us up for our next section. So how do you currently choose a bid price? So give me 1 second here. I'm going to launch that poll. Great, so let us know, if you're coming up with the numbers arbitrarily, you sort of have an idea based on prior experience, Amazon suggested bids. If you're confused about what we're even asking, let us know. That would be important for us to know so we can spend more time explaining that. Yeah. And as always, keep your question coming. Awesome. So Kathleen, what do you normally see people do in your experience when coming up with a bid price?
I think people just use their feeling on where a bid should be.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just based on this is a keyword that I feel is a very important keyword to me, and they just pick a price. Sometimes people use Amazon suggested bid too, because that's the only guideline they sort of give you.
And Amazon suggested bid, just as a background, is sort of Amazon telling you based on similar products in your category what the winning bid prices were. Yep. So it can be a good starting point, but you have to make sure you adjust that to match up to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, bids isn't something that you set and forget. It's definitely something you want to come back to.
All right, awesome. So it looks like most of you voted, so I'm going to close the poll and share results here. And it looks like most people use that suggested bid that we discussed earlier, which makes sense because it's information Amazon is making available to you. And it can be a really good starting point so long as you make sure to go up or down from there based on how things are performing and based on some of the strategies we're about to share. Awesome. So let me hide this and take us into our next section, optimizing your default bids.
Yeah, so let's jump in. So default bids are important because every time you add a new keyword, it's going to default to this bid amount unless you're specifically typing in something different. But it would be better for campaign management if you had the right default bid. Then you don't have to do that one by one to set the right starting point. So what's a good default bid? So you want to make sure it's not too low and not too high. And this is kind of going to depend on your goals as well, and we'll talk about that. But setting a bid that's too low can cause you to underspend and not see performance. You're just not getting served up enough because it's not competitive. So you'll never get to a point where you're able to optimize. You haven't really gone through that discovery phase. You haven't gotten enough data, clicks, sales. And then setting it too high can result in overspend. And it can prevent you from hitting your desired ACoS, so you could always be running higher than you'd like to be.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a formula here for calculating the ad group default bid, and what you should do here is use your ACoS target, which if you use our software, you know what that is. But if you don't, it's really just your desired ACoS. So for example, if it's in the profitability phase, that might be your margin.
Yeah, so that chart we shared earlier, you could still use that to come up with what your target ACoS is, even if you're not using it within our software.
Yeah.
And sort of work towards that yourself. And you would just use that number here. And we'll drop the link into the chat box here, so you guys have this article and the calculation with you. And then this is something you would have to do for each ad group or for each campaign.
Yep. So you take that target ACoS times the product price and the conversion rate, and then that's how you calculate your ad group default bid. We do have some advanced strategies as well in the Help Center article that we're going to share with you, but this relates to making them align with your goals. So if you're in that launch phase, you might want to increase the default bid in that calculation we just gave you by 30 to 50%. If you're in the growth phase, you could leave it as is. I think that's safe. Or if you're in the growth phase, but you're not as sensitive to, spend or increased ACoS, you could increase it by 30%. And in the profitability phase, you could leave it as is, or if you're really sensitive to wasted spend and ACoS, you could decrease it by 30%.
Exactly. And in that article we shared, we do discuss an example as well, which is where you see Lisa mentioned here. And we didn't go through that example live, but it is mentioned in that article to give you an idea for how you would increase or decrease your default based on what you're trying to accomplish. Sort of related to this, Kathleen, we have a question from Herbert about choosing a bid for automatic campaigns when you're first starting off.
Oh, yes, we have that take a tip. So you could use your performance metrics from the mirrored automatic campaign to set your manual default.
Yeah, and if you're just starting your automatic campaign for the first time, you don't know where to start. You can either use Amazon suggested bids, or you could use which I guess you might not have actually for an automatic campaign. I might have misspoken there. But you could use performance from another campaign or similar product and use that sort of as your guideline to create this automatic campaign.
I would also maybe do the calculation we gave, but just replace ACoS target with margin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could, put it in whatever
so you use your margin, and then you can go up or down based on your objective as well. Perfect.
Okay, so next we'll talk about aligning the bidding strategy with goals. So not just the default bid, every single keyword and ad group bid. So on this, you're going to want to adjust your bids on objective and performance, and keep in mind that you won't pay the full value of your bid. So just because you're bidding $2, for example, doesn't mean you're paying $2. You might have heard this before, but Amazon is a second place auction. Mm-hmm. So you're bidding $2, but you end up paying the price of the second place bidder.
So if Kathleen comes in with a $2 bid and I come in with a $1 bid, Kathleen is probably going to win the auction, but she's going to pay $1 for that click.
Right. So the goals here, you want to reduce inefficient spend for both keywords and ad groups, lower your cost per click, control for seasonality and trends in customer searches, and learn about your willingness to spend.
Yeah, the willingness to spend is important. It sounds sort of like a vague tip, but this has happened to me a lot, and I know Kathleen has encountered this, so has Mike, where, people come up with their bid numbers to begin with, which earlier, as we saw, a lot of people use, suggested bids or just arbitrary numbers or based on experience. And you might be willing to put down, say $2.30 as your bid, and you're seeing the performance you get from that bid amount. But then when you start talking about targets and willingness to spend, people might say, I'm willing to spend 20%. I want an ACOS target of 30%. And that 20 or 30% number could actually be far lower than the $2.30 that you're willing to spend in dollars. So it's important to make sure those line up.
Yeah.
So if you want to bid $2.30, that's probably going to mean an ACOS target or desired ACOS that's closer to 50 or 60 rather than 20 or 30.
Mm-hmm. How often would you guys suggest people adjust their bids? I'm sure that's a question people are thinking about.
Yeah, people do ask that question a lot. Ideally, you would do this every day because you want to stay reactive and you want to keep up with the changes in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. But that can be unsustainable if you're doing these manually. You have to go through every single ad group and every single keyword to make that happen. So if you're managing it manually, you would want to do it at least on a weekly basis. But for ideal performance, you want to be changing it on a daily basis.
And I think what's important with that is, and I'll go into it on the next slide as well, but what you're analyzing to change it. Because I know a lot of people want to be changing bids in real time and kind of just changing them all the time, but yeah. Amazon doesn't attribute those ad sales to spend for up to 3 days. Yep. So you're not going to want to analyze those most recent 3 days and change bids based on that because it will just be inaccurate performance data.
Yeah, and if you guys want to write in and let us know how you are actually changing bids right now, we'd like to hear from you, how often you're doing it, how you're making those changes while Kathleen goes through this section.
Yeah, so our typical strategy is you're going to want to start at your default bid, which you've already calculated and set correctly. And then you're going to analyze on 30 days of performance. You could do this daily or weekly. I know it's a lot to go through the spreadsheets and kind of filter to find and use equations to figure out what each bid should be at. So you could do it daily or weekly if you're using spreadsheets. Our software does it daily if you're using the software. It just does it automatically. But you want to make sure you're not including the most recent 3 days. This is big. People ask us all the time, why doesn't your data match Amazon's data? It's usually because they're looking at the most recent 3 days, and that's just inaccurate data.
Yeah, or it's incomplete data because we haven't given you, or Amazon hasn't given you a full picture of your sales yet. So it will eventually be accurate and complete, but you have to give it 3 days before that happens.
And the spend is usually right away too.
Yeah, so Amazon's not going to wait on that. So your spend happens immediately, but your sales take a while to attribute back. So generally speaking, if you're looking at week to day, or sometimes even month to date, that number is going to look really scary because spend is such a bigger portion of it than sales is yet.
Yes.
Then while you're analyzing, I guess, you're going to look at that ACOS column, and you've already decided your desired ACOS for each campaign based on its objective. So you will just want to lower bids where your ACOS is higher than your willingness to spend, and lower them when your conversion rate is decreasing as well, because that just signifies you're getting less return on the spend. And then increase bid when your conversion rate is increasing. That's sort of in line with doubling down on your top performers.
Yep.
And then increase bids that are getting little traction. This is in line with the data discovery phase. So if something is getting little traction and never has had traction, then you're going to want to learn about if a higher bid could actually get you a good return. So you're going to want to increase it.
Yep. And if it's not the bid that's the issue, then you could look at other, product listing, things that you can make changes on, but it's worth trying a higher bid here to see if that allows you to pick up more traction.
Yep.
That brings us to our last strategy here on setting budgets.
Yeah, people ask all the time, what's a good budget? It's a tough question to answer sometimes because it really depends on how much marketing budget you have.
Yeah, so in some ways, a good budget is arbitrary or sort of related to whatever you're willing to spend.
Yeah.
But if we do have some tips on the next page. So campaign budgets, how you should kind of control and optimize it if you do have a restricted budget. is reduce budgets on underperforming campaigns and then reallocate it to the high performing campaigns. So this will help keep your ACoS in line. And then increasing budgets doesn't always mean increasing spend, because there needs to be a demand.
Yes. So if you have, if you're spending $10 a day right now, and you decide to just increase your daily budget to be $50, you're not magically the next day going to see $50 in spend if there wasn't that traffic.
Exactly.
But on the flip side, if you're spending, $12 or $13 a day and you've tried to set a budget of $10, you should definitely increase that, because you probably will see a full $15 in spend if you're willing to do that.
And then, you want to start with campaign budget based on your overall marketing budget, as we mentioned, and then increase or decrease based on the performance. And the take a tip on this page is just, you're going to want to pay attention to each campaign and the SKUs in it, and if they're getting any visibility. Sometimes if you have a budget on a campaign, the most popular SKUs can kind of eat up all the budget, and then the other ones never get seen. So if you see that happening, move them over to their own campaign and put some of the budget on that campaign.
Yeah, and this is probably most common with color variations, I would say. If a black version of something is way more popular than the pink or blue, that one might eat up all of your budget and get all the impressions, while the others kind of struggle.
Right.
All right, so that's budgeting. If you have any questions about that, keep them coming in. We're going to dive into our next section here on common questions and misconceptions that we've encountered. As I mentioned, we've spoken with thousands of sellers at this point between the three of us, so we've had a lot of questions.
Yeah, we also reached out to our team, like everyone here who works with sellers, and kind of got their input on what are people asking you the most.
Yeah, I mean, this could be an entire presentation in and of itself, but we've boiled it down to the top 7 that we've seen recently, to give you an idea for what your other sellers in your space or on Amazon are asking.
Yeah, so I think I could take the first one.
Yeah, go for it.
Can I turn off my automatic campaigns once I harvest enough keywords? I would definitely not suggest that, because the market is always changing. You have to consider seasonality, and you just want to always have that constant flow of data telling you how people are finding you and what they're searching. Without the auto side, you'd lose it. There's also what Mike mentioned earlier, is that with the automatic campaigns, you can show up on your competitor's listing. So if you end those automatic campaigns, you'll no longer have that opportunity. Yeah. And then my guidance is, I understand why people want to turn them off, because they think that automatic campaigns waste money. But if you're following the optimization steps for an automatic campaign and using negative keywords, it really shouldn't be wasting money.
Yeah, and to go off that as well, if you are not, to Gary's point earlier, you can be negating the keywords you put into your manual campaigns from your automatic campaigns to limit the exposure there. But if you're not doing that, another common question is, do I compete with myself if I'm running an auto campaign and I have a keyword in a manual campaign? The answer is no. What I believe Amazon will do is just look at whatever is a higher converting campaign and product coming from that, and serve your ad based on that. So to control it, what I would do is just negate the search term from the automatic campaign and just focus on your bidding strategy in the manual.
Yep, and then just looking at it, I think we had the same question on here twice, but it's just that important, guys. Number 2 and number 5.
Yeah, it's a little different, but it's kind of leading us to the same answer. I saw that too.
Yeah, so if I want to restructure my campaigns, should I turn off my old campaigns right off the bat? And that's not something we would recommend. You want to try and retain your campaign, because sometimes older campaigns do perform better than new ones because they have a history and data. So try to retain. So if you have, say, 20 SKUs in this old campaign, and what it really should be is 4 separate campaigns with groups of 5, I would try to retain at least 5 SKUs in this campaign, move the rest into their own campaigns, and do it that way. So you want to try and hold on to your existing campaigns as best as possible, unless you're not seeing performance here, and then there's no risk really to eliminating them if you're not seeing the performance anyway. In that case, you could just start off brand new, and then slowly over a couple of weeks start reducing the budget on your old campaigns and phasing it out.
Yeah, there may be a time period where the volume is lower because you are starting with new campaigns and cutting the historical campaign. But it'll be worth it to have things structured correctly. That's just like vital if you want to get to an actual like optimized, profitable structure.
Right. Yeah, it'll take a while to ramp up too. You don't want to just turn everything off because then you're just going to sacrifice all the sales coming from that. So I think it's a slow transition, but eventually you could potentially get to a point where you turn off those old ones.
Yes, definitely.
And then if I have 30 variations of my product, I put all the variations into my campaign or into one campaign. There potentially could be an occasion where this happens, but you should at least be using ad groups to separate out or group together variations. But if not all of these 30 variations have the same margin, then definitely no, because different margins should mean different campaigns. And then if 5 of these are new colors that you've added onto your catalog, then definitely no, because your new product should have its own launch campaign versus a growth or profit campaign for your existing ones.
Yep.
And then I get this one a lot, definitely. If my product's already showing up organically at the top of a search, should I still be running ads for that search term? It's a good question, and you could test performance each way, but I think if you stopped running ads for it, you are going to see your competitors start getting some of those sales that you used to be getting, because you just want to take up that real estate. If you're not advertising there, it's not like the advertising part just goes away. Your competitor will advertise there, and it'll be taking up those clicks and sales.
Yeah, and speaking to the automatic campaigns, you can still be shown on your competitors' product pages. So even if you're on the first page showing up organically, if your competitor gets a click, your ad can be shown on their product page. So definitely just want to keep those running.
Exactly. Perfect. And if you have any questions that we haven't addressed here, keep those coming in. We have a Q&A section at the end, but now it's time for another poll. We just want to know how you're currently managing sponsored products. So let me just launch that quickly here. Just love to hear from you. And this one, you can actually select multiple options. If you do a combination of these things, feel free to let us know that as well. So it's not one or the other. People generally do a combination of factors. So let us know how that's going for you. All right, so we'll just give a couple of minutes for that to trickle in. In the meantime, keep your questions coming. Our team is busy answering them, and we'd like to address it live as well. Perfect. I think most of you have voted, so let me close that poll and share the results here. It looks like most of you are doing it directly in Seller Central, and then the next most common method is software, but it's a pretty big gap from 70 to 20. So Seller Central, it's definitely essential, but as your business starts to grow and scale, especially when it comes to bid changes, then software might be a more feasible alternative. So let me hide the results here. Perfect. So we have another webinar coming up that's going to be in a few weeks here, July 18th. It's going to be another campaign masterclass on growing organic sales with sponsored products. So make sure you sign up for that. But what I'd like to spend the rest of the time here is just answering questions and making sure we've answered most of your pressing questions here.
Any good ones?
Let's see. So Rebecca has a question. Do you need to have the lowest price on an ASIN page to run successful ads? I'm going to assume, Rebecca, that you have other competitors on your listing here if you're changing pricing to be the lowest. So really with sponsored products ads, until you're in the buy box, your ad is not going to run. So you have to be in the buy box for your ad to be eligible to run, which for buy box occupancy, price might matter. Having the lowest price might give you the buy box more often. So from that perspective, it could help. But the more you're in the buy box, the more your ads will run, the better your sponsored products campaigns will run as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people who are traditional retailers, when I ask if they run ads, they say no because they don't want to help their competition. It's just not true. When you're running ads, to Gary's point, you're only being shown in the buy box. So all those attribution sales coming from sponsored ads will go directly to your business. You're not really helping out your competitors there.
Exactly. And if you do have, competition that pops up on your listings, you just want to make sure, you're priced competitively, but priced based on, what your branding parameters are and what you're trying to accomplish there with the product.
Yep. Be careful with map products. Don't
exactly.
break those.
Great. And then Martha has a question about, if we can help get campaigns organized based on naming conventions, etc.
Yes.
Yes is the answer.
Short answer.
Short
Yes.
answer is yes. So Martha, one of our team members will reach out to you probably before end of day today to let you know what options we have there, and we try to make as much information available as possible to make sure you set up correctly.
Yep.
And then I don't think we addressed this on our most common questions, but I think it was on that slide about how naming convention impacts performance. So your campaign names probably won't affect how your campaign performs. If you have a keyword in your campaign name, it's not going to improve performance of that campaign, but it's mostly a management tool for you and a way for you to change how you're targeting that particular campaign and tracking how that product is performing.
Yep, good point.
All right. Let's see. When creating a new ad group for a new product, is there a guideline for how many keywords to start with?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so if you're creating a new ad group for a new product, I'm guessing you're creating, a new manual ad group here. Is there a guideline for how many keywords you should start with if you're creating a new ad group?
Yeah, so obviously we're really data driven over here. I don't think there's a specific number we would recommend. What I would recommend is do the explore strategy first. So run an auto campaign on that for a little bit, maybe 2-3 weeks. That way you gather enough data. And then transfer whatever's working into the manual campaign. It could be 10 keywords or 10 search terms that you want to turn into keywords. It could be 50, but I don't think there's a set number to put into an ad group to start.
Yep.
I think you just have to analyze the data and capitalize on whatever you see is working for you.
Yeah, and it's okay when you're creating manual campaign structure to create a manual campaign that doesn't have keywords in it yet.
Right.
The key is to have the right keywords and not just the quantity, because you could actually dilute performance if you just end up keyword stuffing a campaign with 50 words that you think are relevant, that all they're doing is spending your money but not giving you performance. It could hurt your conversion rate too, which is not great.
Yep.
So I recommend there might be just 2 keywords that bring you 90% of your sales or 80% of your sales, and that's very common. We probably see that more often than not, that a small group of keywords are going to be responsible for most of your sales.
Yeah, and one thing as well, if you're bidding on a keyword that you think will work for you, for instance, I talked to someone and they sell men's wallets, and one of their keywords that they were bidding on but not getting any sales was the word wallets for men. What I recommend to people, there's a bigger picture, and I think we touched on this before. What does your pricing look like compared to your competitors? What does your product pages look like? Your bullet points, descriptions? Do you have good reviews? The data can only show you so much. So looking at it from a higher standpoint is a good strategy as well.
Yep. We have a question here about competing against yourself. So do you compete against yourself if you have the same product in different campaigns or ad groups, or if you have different products that maybe have the same keywords associated with them? So in the first instance, I guess my question would be, why do you have the same product in multiple campaigns or ad groups? It should really be in one automatic campaign and one manual. And if you decide to create a campaign, just to target that product separately, I would recommend pausing it in the other campaign. So really shouldn't have it running multiple times. But you're not ever going to compete against yourself to drive up bids, if that's the question here. So Amazon recognizes who is bidding, and if they see, it's associated with you, they're not going to make you drive up a bid on another keyword for another product for yourself.
Yep.
All right. And when you're moving keywords from automatic to manual, do you suggest setting that keyword as negative keyword in the automatic campaign? Why or why not? How will that impact campaign performance?
Yeah, so I do recommend that you negate it from the automatic campaign, especially if you're using software like Takeometrics, which is really focused heavily on getting you the best bids in the marketplace. That way you're focused on driving sales for a bidding strategy where you can end up bidding more to make more money. So if you don't want to see, or you want to control your spend in the automatic campaign, you can negate that search term from the automatic campaign. So you're just focused on it in the manual. I think that's just best practice. Otherwise, you have them both running in it could be, you could see better results coming from the manual campaign.
Yep. And then sort of related to that, Joseph has a question about a good way to come up with more specific long tail keywords based on successful, shorter, broader keywords. So if you have, broader phrase match keywords in your manual campaigns that are converting for you, that data is available to you. So in our software would be the targeting improvements page that Mike went over, where, a keyword like women's raincoat might cause you to show up for yellow women's raincoat or gray women's raincoat, and that would be your long tail keyword that you target. Mm-hmm. So if a broader phrase match is converting for you, your search term report will indicate long tail search terms that you should then add as a phrase or an exact match keyword into that campaign.
Yep.
All right, we have a question from Louis or Lewis, I'm not sure which one, here about, his auto campaign has a lower ACoS than his manual campaign. What strategies could he try to, lower the ACoS on that manual? I think my advice would be first, do you have the right keywords in your manual campaign? And are you changing your bids on those keywords? Reducing bids on ones that aren't performing for you, increasing bids on ones that are. Because most likely in this scenario, it's not the amount of spend that's causing your ACoS to go up, it's that you're spending in the wrong places. Mm-hmm. So I would review your keyword performance, adjust bids, and then if there are any keywords you put in there that actually don't have a history of converting for you, so maybe you just came up with those keywords, didn't use an automatic campaign, then I would recommend maybe pausing those keywords. Yep. So you don't spend in the wrong spots and drive up your ACoS.
Right.
And then follow-up question from Lewis is, can I bid below the suggested bid and still get sales? Yes, but probably not at the same volume. If you are, reducing your bid just to try to be more conservative, there is a good chance that you're not going to capture as much data, so your sales volume will drop. In an ideal world, everybody would just bid, 5 cents and get $5,000 in sales. That's what everyone wants to do, but it's not always mathematically or realistically possible in this ecosystem. Yep. So I would say yes, but that sales volume might drop because you probably were bidding on some clicks that you can't afford with this new lower bid. All right. Martha has a really good question. Do you guys recommend running sponsored products ads right away on a new product that has no reviews yet?
Yes. My answer would definitely be yes. I can take this one. So I think it's important to run ads on a product even though it doesn't have any reviews. If you're getting those impressions and getting that product in front of the right people and it could potentially convert into a sale for you, that sale could then in turn bring you more reviews. So I think it's really important just to run those ads to get that real estate. Again, focusing more on market share rather than an ACoS number there is going to be important. So definitely start off running sponsored products is a great way to compete with people who have been selling that product and could be on page 1, 2, or 3, so on and so forth. You definitely want to run those to gather that data. And it's a new product, so maybe you're using that data to help with other parts such as the product pages, the bullet points and the backend search terms there. So it'll help your organic sales as well, which, in turn comes to reviews.
Yeah, we call that the flywheel effect here.
Yes.
So one aspect of your business feeds into the other. So to keep the flywheel churning, you basically want to run sponsored ads so you get more data, so you can improve your listings, so you get more sales, so you get more reviews. And then as you get more sales and more reviews, your sponsored ads are going to start to perform better as well.
Yep.
So it's a flywheel effect, and so nothing is going to exist independently. One aspect is always going to help out the other.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. Circle of life. Great. And then Joseph has another question about when dealing with a more saturated market, such as supplements, where clicks cost so much, do you have any suggestions to maintain a lower ACoS while still driving some sales? That's a really good question, Joseph. So we do see a lot of sellers come in through saturated or competitive marketplaces, supplements in particular. I would say you have to decide, what your opportunity cost is here. In a competitive marketplace, you have to spend a lot of money to get sales, and there's no way around it. So you kind of have to decide at what point am I okay sacrificing some of these clicks, some of the sales volume just to maintain a lower ACoS. Mm-hmm. So based on how you're budgeted and your actual dollar amount that you're spending, it might not be sustainable for you to keep paying to get sales volume. So at some point you have to focus on profitability and work with the data set that you have and the sales volume that you get at that lower ACoS.
Yeah. It sounds cliche, but you need to find a happy medium in those situations.
Let's see. Question here about, rather than pausing a keyword, is there any advantage to just slashing the bid price? In some instances, they're probably going to have the same effect for you. If you bid really low on a competitive keyword or a popular keyword, it's essentially going to be the same as pausing it because you're likely not going to be showing up for those searches at a low bid price. If you're running an automatic campaign at the same time, where you can still capture that keyword once it reappears, in that instance too, it doesn't matter whether you pause really or lower the bid. But sometimes if you have a lot of keywords in your campaign that are there for no reason other than to increase the number of keywords in there, then even a low bid price can start to add up and affect your overall performance for that campaign or ad group. So in that instance, it makes more sense to pause to completely eliminate spend versus having, 100 keywords at a really low bid, but then those really low bids add up 100 times.
Right.
Great. So Dave has a question. Do keywords in the campaign have to be in the product listing? That's a good question, Dave, and it comes back into that flywheel concept. So essentially, if you're showing up for a search in your automatic campaign, you likely do have that term or something related somewhere in your product listing page, because that's how Amazon is deciding relevancy and surfacing it. And only when it is converted for you in your automatic campaign should you add that as a manual keyword. So short answer, yes. If it's in your manual campaign as a keyword, it probably exists in some variation on your product listing page. It might not be that exact string because it could potentially be a phrase or a broad match that cause you to populate, but some version of that keyword should exist in your listing page. And it should also exist probably in your backend if it's a very high performing keyword. So that's another place you could look to improve your relevancy for that search. Great. Says negating the keyword in the automatic campaign affects campaign performance, suggesting archiving the keyword instead. If it's an automatic campaign, Kenny, there is no keyword that you can archive. It would just be negating keywords when you're moving from auto to manual. So archiving keywords is not an option in the automatic campaign at all because you can't add keywords to begin with. In your manual campaigns, you could archive. I recommend pausing rather than archiving so you still have historical data for that keyword. All right. And then follow-up question for Joseph. I don't think you addressed whether or not you'll compete against yourself if you have two different products advertising for the same keywords. You won't compete against yourself in the case where you would drive up bids against yourself, but what's going to happen is one of those products, which is a better converter, is probably going to end up grabbing the spot for that keyword. And the other product might still place. So a keyword or a product that's converting, at 10% might place on page 2 versus one that's converting at 3% might still place, but it might be on page 4 or 5. So they might both end up running ads, just not in the same spot. Great. And then I think we have a couple more questions here, maybe trying to go through the list as efficiently as possible. And if we don't get to it here right now, because I'm doing a very bad job of looking through this list of questions, we'll definitely make sure we address that, and some of our team members will reach out to you and answer those as well. Great. So Martha has a question about, if a broad keyword is converting better than and has a better ACoS than the exact. Generally speaking, narrow match types will be more efficient converters for you. There might be instances where maybe the broad is converting better if it has been running for longer, and the exact just doesn't have as much data behind it. And exact matches also have limited searches, so it might take it a while to become more efficient because people just aren't typing that long string as often. So it might be a while to get enough data for that ACoS to look better.
Yeah, I think if you can get to a long string exact match type, if you think about the consumer, chances are they're further down the buying process as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like think about if you're selling headphones and you're bidding on the broad match type earbuds, whereas if people are just searching Amazon to do browsing, whereas if you have an exact match type that are over the ear earbuds wireless, chances are that customer is further down the buying process and has more potential to convert on that. So that's why we try to get to exact match types, and why we tend to find the cost per click on those be a little bit less.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can get a better ACoS target if people are buying when you get that click.
Yeah, I know I've been shopping for a new apartment. So I was looking last night on Amazon for a drying rack, and that's what I typed in. And then it showed me everything from like a clothes drying rack to a dish drying rack. So I went back, changed my
Be more
search
specific.
to be dish drying rack, which is what I was actually trying to get to.
Yep.
And then as I saw, more options, I was like, oh, maybe I want a metal one or a plastic one. And I kept editing my search to give myself the best results. So that's the same thing that's going to happen to you, is as shoppers change their searching habits, you're going to start to see more of those long-tailed search terms that are more specific, that not as many people type in. But when they do, you should convert better for it.
Yeah, it's a good example.
Yes. Well, I'll put it on my Amazon wish list, Mike. You can get it for me.
Send it to me. I got you.
Awesome. So it doesn't look like we have any other new questions. But like I said, our team's always available. You'll probably hear from us, shortly here, especially if you sign up for that free trial, which you can still do free 30 days, really no risk to you. And if you have any other questions, you could always reach out to us as well. We monitor all of the channels of communication that we have set up.
Yep.
And we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar on July 18th as well. Let me pull that up here. So you have it. It's going to be the campaign masterclass, and we'll be sharing a recording of this webinar as well.
Great.
So we'll remind you of the next one, share a recording of this one. And if you think of any other questions, definitely reach out to us. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Thanks so much, and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.